Okay, I'm going to begin, even though we have only a couple people here, because I just want to get this talk done. So, what I'm here to talk about, and I'm sure people are going to check in during the talk. So, I'll keep my eye on the waiting room and allow them in for at least the next 20 minutes before I just have to continue focusing on what I'm talking about. What I'm here to do is to talk about a very bizarre, beautiful, and powerful island in the Aegean Sea. Uh, it's one of the 12 islands that are linked together. It's the last of a chain of islands, and it's called the island of Patmos. And Patmos is fairly well known because now somebody just came. Patmos is very well known because it plays a key role in Christianity. What is that role? The role that it plays in Christianity is the last book of the New Testament is the book of Revelations, or the Apocalypse, as it's called. And it was theoretically received on the island of Patmos in the year 90, after 90 of the Christian era, when John, the Apostle John, was living in the island, living in Ephesus, and he was said to have been trying to convince people to believe in Christianity. And as a punishment, he was sent to the island of Patmos for 3 years. They think 3 years or 3 months. We don't know for sure. And during his stay on the island of Patmos, he received a very, very, very cryptic and powerful vision, which we know as the Book of Revelations. And the Book of Revelations is a very complicated text to understand because it's so cryptic, and the symbolism is very powerful and very confusing for the modern Western mind. But visions, as we know, not only from the New Testament, but also from the Old Testament, can also often be overwhelming. And can you, somebody please turn their microphone off in the background? I don't know if that's who has their microphone on. No, that's not on. Why am I here to talk about this island and the Book of Revelations? Well, because for the last 7 years, I've been there every year, sometimes twice a year, to offer a seminar which is based on the Book of Revelations. And it's a healing seminar because I'm known as a healer. And the reason why I'm known as a healer is because I had the very, very good fortune of spending the last 6 years of the life of a great healer and mystic and seer. His name was Stylianos Techelis, known to the world as the Magus of Strovolos, or Daskalos, which is a Greek term which means teacher or guru. And like I said, I was able to spend the last 6 years of his life with him, working extremely close with him and receiving a lot of his inner teachings. He has a very strong connection himself with the Apostle John, who is the spirit guide of Daskalos. And it was actually John who taught most of the teachings that Daskalos gave us. And Daskalos was humble enough to say that he takes no credit for it, but John gives him all the material. And I feel very much the same way, because since Daskalos' passing in 1995, and I moved to Munich, Germany to be with my future wife, then John took me under his wing and said, "Okay, Paul, you're basically orphaned from this world. I will adopt you, and I will guide you." And he has guided me now for the last 25 years through some very, very interesting times, not only personally, but also, as we know, the world is going through a major paradigm shift, which it cannot be underestimated how massive this paradigm shift, and it's absolutely global. And like I said, I've been fortunate enough that people trust me enough as a teacher that they follow me to the island of Patmos. And what we do then over these 7 days, we bring 7 days there, is we experience the book of Revelations as basically a guide to deep, deep healing. Why? There's something extraordinary about the Gospel, also about the Gospel of John, but about the Apocalypse that most people don't see at the first reading, and that it's built up out of a series of 7 series. Okay, the first are the 7 letters, and it continues with the 7 bowls of poison, and continues and continues and continues. And each one of these seven series is then subdivided through 7 as well. That means that what you experience during a reading or a seminar on the Book of Revelations is 49 events or 49 happenings. And it's interesting that Daskalos taught about the 7 main chakras. And one day he woke up and he said, Paul, it's not only that we have 7 primary chakras. He didn't call them chakras. He called them energy centers, but their chakras are also divided, then subdivided through 7. And he claimed and he taught that we partake, each one of us partakes in as many as 49 planes and subplanes. And so if you bring those 2 things together, the fact that Daskalos says that each one of us is composed or has the possibility to partake in 49 planes, and you take a book like the Book of Revelations, which describes 49 events, then it's pretty clear you have a very, very powerful healing book there. Probably you'll find no book that fits the human experience as well as the Book of Revelations. And it sounds very bizarre to say that, because most people, when they read the Book of Revelations, they say to me they cannot understand it one bit, or they can understand it because it's all written in one language or the other, but it's very, like I said, it's very cryptic, and it's very vivid, and the imagery is very powerful. And this summer, I was encouraged by my wife to go into trauma, and I was against it. I thought that why should I teach about trauma? But I do trust my wife enough that she said, Paul, what you have to do is you have to offer 10 evening workshops. And now we're by the 8th. We've done already 7. We're doing the next one next Wednesday. And I see why she said that to me, because I was blind to the amount of trauma that most of us have experienced, including myself. And because of the work that I'm doing with this group of 10 people, I've been going into the sources of trauma, and there are many. It's even clear that after 2 weeks after the gestation, when the egg and the seed come together in the womb of a mother, we are capable of being traumatized, and that's called prenatal trauma. And then also many of us went through early childhood trauma, maybe because our parents were dysfunctional. Maybe we grew up in a situation where there was a conflict in the environment, a war. And a lot of us then experienced early childhood trauma. And then you bring that together. When you're traumatized, you tend to carry that into life. And often you enter relationships, interpersonal relationships, even romantic relationships, where you'll continue to traumatize each other because you're traumatized and you don't know how to have a healthy relationship with somebody else, and they don't know how to have a happy relationship. So you come together and then you traumatize yourselves even more. And that's another thing. And then there's another aspect of it, which is called pan-generational trauma, which claims quite rightly, it's in the Bible, that each one of us is composed of at least 7 generations of trauma. But it's pretty much scientifically proved that each one of us is composed of at least 10 generations of trauma. And what that means is that our ancestors who partook in our genetic composition, who helped contribute to our genetic contribution, they might have experienced something very traumatic 500 years ago, like a war or a disease or an accident or something like that, and we don't have it on record, except we do have it on record. It's in me. It's in my genes. It's in my cell memory, and it has a very powerful effect on my quality of life. And like I said, it's a mystery because we don't even know what they went through, but because pan-generational trauma gets carried on and carried on and carried on, and if it's not faced by the parent, and I'm a parent, then it's going to be carried on to the child even more than if it's faced. Yeah. Oh no, if it's faced and confronted, then it can be sort of you can have less of it, and you pass less of it on to your offsprings. As a matter of fact, we know here in Germany that during the World War II, we had a lot of women who were traumatized. The Jewish women were traumatized in the camps by German soldiers, and some of them survived. And a lot of German women were then traumatized by Russian soldiers who raped them as revenge. And they thought it was better that they spared their children from it, so they wouldn't talk about it to their children. And when they didn't talk about it with their children, then actually the children get much more of it, uh, as if they actually shared it with the children, then the children would be cognizant of it, and they would realize it, and it wouldn't have such a strong effect on them if it's kept a secret. And why do I bring that up? Because what I've realized now is that practically every one of us is composed of a great deal of trauma, either in this life or in past life or in our ancestral genealogy. And it's almost like nobody was really aware of that. Or not aware of it. I mean, I've had a very blessed life because I was able to live with Daskalos, and I'm married and have 2 children. And still, I didn't really look at my childhood trauma in great detail until very recently. I knew I had a very dysfunctional childhood, but I didn't think that I didn't think I could equate it to being traumatized. And I realized that there was a lot of trauma in me, which I hadn't processed yet. And I know that about a lot of my clients now, because I'm a healer myself, or I work in healing myself. And a lot of people who come to me are suddenly becoming very much aware of how much trauma they're carrying. And trauma has a profound effect on every aspect of our being, our physical health, our emotional health, our interpersonal relationships, our work relationships. And so as I said, I've been teaching this course on the island of this queer, strange island, which is called Patmos, which is only 34 kilometers in size and has a population, they say, of 3,000. But I think that's a little bit of a propaganda, because I know people who live there in winter, and they say there may be 1,400 people, but there's a little trick played on the Greek islands that you say we have a population that's larger than it actually is, because then you get a little bit more money from. But leave that then. I know for a fact that in the winter months there's probably around 1,400 people, and anyhow, a very small population on a very small island. And this island, I was there in June for my birthday, just for 24 hours, just to spend my birthday there with a good friend of mine there. And as I said, I've been going there every year now for the last 7 years, and now will be the 8th year in September. And every time I go there, I truly cannot believe how beautiful that island is. The island is. The island is the most beautiful island I think you can imagine. And there's a reason for it. Before I go into the Book of Revelations, which is totally constructed on trauma. It's one of the most untraumatic books you can read. It's every day something's going to be destroyed. And there's a reason why, because the whole story of the Book of Revelations is fantastic. What happens is it requires of us that we be transformed into a new earth. And that's the whole thing. When a new earth is there, then the heavenly city will then come down, the New Jerusalem, and they will actually sort of be married together, because you need a virgin earth in order to receive this city, which has no temple and has no church and has no division. And that's what happened. That's what unfolds through every chapter of the book of Revelations, and that's what actually unfolds with us over this week that we spend on the island of Patmos. Is that we will be transformed into a new earth, and then on the last day, the heavenly city comes down and blesses us and comes together with the new earth, and we become then unified into a singularity, a divinity, actually. Where does the island of Patmos come from? Some of you might know that I've been I've been offering a lot of seminar trips to what we call our ancestral lands. One of them is Patmos, the other one's the Holy Land, and more recently to go to Anatolia and also to Egypt. And I've become very aware of what we call polytheism, which characterized the Hellenic times and the Egyptian times. And during the Hellenic times in the Greek islands and also in Anatolia, they believed in a plurality of gods and goddesses. As a matter of fact, their family tree of gods and divinities was a perfect balance between the male and the female. Perfect balance, 50-50. And there were two sets of gods. The first gods that existed were the Titans, and there were 12 of them. They were the prehistorical gods. And one of the goddesses that belonged to the Titans was a beautiful goddess called Leto. And Leto, then the Olympia gods, the 12 Olympia gods, managed to come into existence, and there was a conflict between the Titans and the Olympia gods. However, so who's the chief of the Olympia gods is Zeus. And Zeus was roaming the earth, as he was known to do, behind the back of his wife Hera. And he saw Leto, and he was quite taken by her. And they had an affair. And the result of this affair, which might have been a one-night stand, is that Leto is then pregnant with twins. And the twins are quite famous. One is a daughter called Artemis, and her brother is called Apollo, which is quite amazing, because if you think that Apollo and Artemis, from the mother's side, they are children of the Titans, and from the father's side, they are children from the Olympic gods. This is something. In any case, Leto's quite pregnant, and she's about to give birth, probably in Ephesus in Ortega. And Hera, the wife of Zeus, caught wind of this, and she didn't want to allow that. So she's looking for Leto, and she's looking to see where she's about to give birth, that she can destroy the whole situation there. And Leto gave birth first to Artemis. So Artemis is the first midwife. And realizing that they were in danger, they set off to find another place to give birth to the twin brother, Apollo. Well, what happened in the meantime was Hera said to Gaia, Mother Earth, sink all the dry land in the world below the sea level, that she'll never find a place to land and give birth. And so Gaia did this, and all the islands sunk below the sea level except one island, Delos. And if you ever have a chance to go to Delos, go there. It's called the Island of the Gods. It remained above, and so Artemis and Leto and Apollo in her belly land on Delos, and then Apollo is born. So everything's okay. The twins grow up, they become very powerful, and Artemis is hanging out in in the near from on the coast of Turkey today. And she's going around. It's a beautiful moonlit night, and she's going through the Latmos Mountains. Now, the Latmos Mountains are not far from Patmos, and that's where the moon god Selene is at home. So Selena's sitting there, and she's looking out over the beautiful sea. And then Artemis comes by and says, "Hey, sister," because they're like sisters, because they both have the moon, the half moon as a symbol. "How's it going?" She says, "Oh, everything's fine. Can I sit with you?" Artemis asks Selena, "Sure." So they're staring together out, looking over the beautiful Aegean Sea, and Artemis sees a landmass underneath the sea. And she's looking at it, and the moon rays are reflecting on it. And she said, "Wow, that is beautiful. I think that's my island. I got to get it up. I got to bring it up to above the sea level. And who's going to do that?" So she goes to her brother Apollo, and Apollo, he's powerful, partly because he's a child he's a child of the Titans and a child of the Olympic gods. And Apollo says, "Sister, I can't do that without getting permission from Papa." "No problem." He goes to Zeus, his father, and says, "My sister, your daughter, wants to have this island brought up from the bottom of the ocean. Can we do it?" And the thing is that Zeus always says yes to Artemis, always. So they managed to pull it up. And since then, we have Patmos. Which actually sounds pretty crazy, but if you know anything about Patmos, the first temple that was built there was an Artemis temple. Today, where the John Monastery stands, it is well known that there was first an Artemis temple there. Okay, so we made our little foray into Greek mythology. And now we can go back to what we're talking about, the perfect combination of the Book of Revelations and where we're standing now. So as I said, over the last 7 years, I've been teaching a course, basically a retreat, sometimes twice a year in English and German, going into that. And a lot of us have become aware of that. Through that week there, we become aware of patterns that we have. Because don't forget, the Book of Revelations and the Apocalypse means that things will be exposed. In German is Offenbarung, everything will be revealed. Everything will be revealed. So over the last 7 years, a lot of things in us have been revealed, old patterns that we weren't aware of. In German, there's a beautiful word called Erkenntnis, which means basically awareness or knowledge of yourself, Selbsterkenntnis. And as a healer, I know that one of the most important things for a client to accomplish is Erkenntnis, self-awareness. And once they're aware of why they're suffering, then healing's allowed to transpire. Okay. And so what I'm sensing very strongly now is because we've all become acutely aware of how traumatized we are, especially because this last 2.5 years of the COVID experience was icing on the cake as far as trauma goes, because of this whole tension between vaccinated and unvaccinated. This whole thing about wearing masks and keeping social distance was pretty heavy, really heavy. And it was sort of really like the icing of the cake. This is the last dose of trauma that we have to go through before we can say, okay, that's enough now. Let this era of trauma come to an end. And I know now when I travel now to Patmos in September, and there's still like 2 or 3 places left. And most of the people have been there with me. I have regular customers, and so most of the people have been there with me already, but there are a couple of new people that now it's going to go into a deep release of trauma. This week in September, late September, I can promise you, and I don't make promises unless I know it's going to happen. A lot of us will be free from trauma in this week, because the trauma that addresses us in the Book of Revelations is exactly the trauma that we all have in ourselves. And through this violence, it's almost like a homeopathic remedy, through this violence that we read about and we go through meditations and through healing techniques, it's going to be completely mirrored in us. And then the sources of divine mercy are going to go into us and say, okay, my children, I'm going to take away all this trauma, whether it's prenatal trauma, early childhood trauma, karmic pattern trauma, whether it's pan-generational trauma. It's going to be a powerful release of trauma this year, and maybe next year, and maybe next year. It keeps going. But anyhow, I know that this year we're going to be shifting gears, because the first 7 years came to a close, and that was all about becoming self-aware of who we are and what we're carrying. And now, because that came to a close, it fits perfectly to the end of the COVID time. Now we're going to shift gears and go in another direction, which is going to be actually, thanks to the Book of Revelations, actually going to be freed of a lot of trauma. And that's why I'm so excited and actually so comforted to be going there again, and that enough people want to join me there, because I know it's going to be a whole different story this year. I wanted to say something else, but I think I forgot what I wanted to say. Oh, no, I wanted to talk to you about something that some of you might be aware of, but anyhow, myself as a healer, I was trained by Daskalos to be a healer. Daskalos was convinced that I was going to be a healer. I was not convinced. I was very skeptical, but everything that Daskalos prophesied about my life has happened. He said I was going to be a teacher and a healer. And I said, no way, Daskalos, that's not my way, that you did that. I can't do that. He said, yes, you can, Paul. And now 26 years later, I'm still doing it. Yeah. And I was trained by Daskalos to be basically a riverbed, a channel for the Christ energy and the archangels of the elements, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. And about 2 years ago, something else happened. Suddenly another energy was flowing through me, and I trusted it because I'm passive as a healer, like Daskalos was passive, like Christ was passive. Most people don't know that Christ was fully passive to his source. He says, I do nothing myself, but my father and mother do everything through me. And Daskalos himself was extremely passive, and passivity is the way of a healer. And suddenly, since about 2 years, another energy has been flowing through me, and that is the absolute divine feminine. It's described in the Gospel of Philip, which we made a book on tapes about, where Jesus says in the Gospel of Philip, it's not that I have only a father in heaven, but I also have a mother in heaven, and the mother's called the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost. But the advantage of the German language is you can put different articles onto that. And if Jesus calls that energy feminine, then we added the feminine article die, and the feminine ending Geisten, die Heiligen Geisten, as the divine feminine. And I understood why she wanted to flow through me, is because she realizes how much damage we have in us. How much, not only from vaccine damage, but also through trauma that we have in us. And she says, I'm responsible for freeing my children of all of what they're suffering from. And she's also been very active in the weeks that we've had on the island of Patmos, especially since last year especially, and the year before a little bit. And now I have a sense that she's going to be there fully for us this week. Maybe even the primary energy, which sounds like a paradox, because it was the Christ energy which gave John the Book of Revelations. But I have a strong sense that it's going to be the Holy Mother, which is going to be responsible and the most active energy in taking the trauma out of our glandular system, out of our cell memory, and out of our DNA, and out of our organs, and out of everything, out of our blood and everything. So that's going to be something that we can look forward to as well. Good. I think I shared with you an overview of what this week means. Um, any of you can, of course, go to Patmos by yourself. Patmos is not easy to get to, thank God. There is no airport, and even now, you'd have to fly to Kos or to Samos or to Athens and then take a boat. And something really strange happened this year. They cut off all the flights to Samos and even cut the flights down to Kos. But because of the terrible fires in Rhodos, and other Greek islands, I'm so sorry for the Greeks. They started flying people to Kos because the families who wanted to do holidays needed to go someplace else. So you can fly once again to Kos, and then you get a ferry that takes about 2.5 hours to reach the island of Patmos. That means Patmos is protected. And it is protected because Patmos, I can tell you one thing, it's not really on this earth. What do I mean by that? Just like Artemis said when she sat with her sister Selena, when it was sitting on the bottom of the ocean and brought it up, she could have brought it even further up because Patmos is somehow suspended between earth and heaven. That's why it is a perfect portal for the heavenly city. You see how all this comes together. You have this island, which is not really anchored in the Mediterranean Sea. It's brought up thanks to Apollo and everybody, but it's not firmly anchored in the seabed. And because it's being drawn up to the heavenly city, and even when you're there, you get a sense that you're no longer on the earth. I mean, not only is the beauty overwhelming, because the beauty is absolutely overwhelming, but then to add to it, the energy is overwhelming. You know, Patmos is not only about positive energy. There's also some shadow energy there. There's no place in the world where there's only positive energy. Wherever there's light, there's darkness. Okay. And even as you go through the book of Revelations, and then what we call the counter forces start to get worried about that, and they start to attack, for example, the woman who's pregnant, and then Michael starts fighting against these counter forces. It's an unbelievable drama, and Michael never loses, thank God. So in the end, the counter forces, which are basically the egoism in us, are defeated. And we are a new earth. And when we're a new earth, we're ready to receive the heavenly city. And some people say, is that what we're going through now? It's not what we're going through now. It's not the fate of the world. It's the fate of each one of us. The apocalypse is the fate of each one of us. There are a lot of parallels now. There are definitely a lot of parallels going on in the world to what we read about in the book of Revelations. But it's not about the end of time. It's not about the end. Actually, it's about the beginning of time. If you think about the marriage between the new earth and the heavenly city, then it's about a rebirth or a new start. So that's what I offer, and I intend to offer it all the days of my life. I love the island. I keep saying that it can't be as extraordinary as it is, but when I get back there, I say, it's extraordinary as it is. I mean, in German, you say there's no island that you can compare to the Herrlichkeit, which is the beauty, the glory, and the Heiligkeit, the holiness, as Patmos is. Yeah. So there's you can put it on the same level as Jerusalem or Varanasi or Lhasa or any of these other sacred cities which grace this world. It is up there with that. Okay, we have only 2 people taking part right now. Do you have any questions? One's from Cyprus. Hi, Cyprus. I'll be coming to Cyprus next March to offer a course, Panos, in Polis. So my first return to Cyprus since I left 27 years ago. Looking forward to get back. Do either one of you have any questions about what I just talked about?
Yes, Paul, I have a quick question. Since the book of Revelation has 21 chapters, so if one, let's say myself, since I have not been close to Europe, would take this 21 chapter and fast, in a sense, not strictly, but in a sense, and read these chapters, let's say each chapter for 3 times a day or 7 times a day, and so on and so forth, would one have at least a portion of that effect that one has when goes
yes,
back?
you will. Yeah, you will. It's funny actually, you're right that it has 21 chapters. And you know what other book has 21 chapters? The Gospel of John. Yeah, do that. Yeah, do that. Do that. And ask for the Divine Mother to be there with you.
I thank you on saying that. Yeah. And now that you mentioned John, I felt as if some kind of a breeze came over me.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Would then one like myself do both of them simultaneously?
I would do first the Gospel of John and then the Book of Revelations. The Gospel of John is at one level, and the Book of Revelations is at a whole nother level. It's interesting that the Gospel of John is the last book of the 4 Gospels, and the last book of the second part of the Gospel, the New Testament, is the Book of Revelations. Panos, do you have any questions?
Hi, Paul. I'm following your YouTube channel because I'm doing some research on Daskalos. I actually have a painting of Daskalos that my uncle gave to me.
Oh, nice.
Which he bought in and I put it on my son's room. We believe the energy is good. It's a sunset with the 3 planes, you know.
Yeah, they're almost all sunsets.
I'm sure you relate.
I have right here where I am. I have 4 paintings of Daskalos hanging.
Yes,
you gave me
I've
one
seen some of your videos. Yes, you showed some.
You.
Paul, we will try to, if we can manage, we will try to. Me and my wife, if we can manage, we live in Limassol. We will try to attend your seminar if you will do it. And it's a big honor after so many years. We were actually thinking of, visiting Panayota. We passed through Daskalos neighborhood in Strovolos, and we sometimes walk there. And it would be nice to speak to somebody who was actually close to Daskalos. And with all the respect of your method and teaching, but you know.
The thing is, Panos, when I got there, I was 28 years old. Now I'm 62. And as life goes on, a lot of people who knew Daskalos personally, they've passed on themselves,
Yeah,
but it's funny because the hotel where I'll be teaching on Polish, she met Daskalos.
Right. Look, I actually read when I was younger. I'm 48 now, and my mom owned the Magos of Strovolos book, and I was really interested. And then she bought the Esoteric Didaskalia, which is the internal teaching, which was a very, very hard book.
Very hard.
Yeah,
he didn't write it. Panos, he didn't write it. His students wrote it.
Really?
Yeah, no, he didn't write it. No, he didn't write it. His students wrote it, and so that's why it's so complicated. It's a long story. We can go into it, but even the even the first English translation and the German translation is a catastrophe.
Yes, I read it in Greek, and it's quite difficult. I mean,
I'm sorry,
but I mean, it's. I'm trying to figure out many things, and I'm actually listening to some of his videos. That one Greek. Probably one of his inner students wrote. Probably you know him.
That's the best thing to do.
Many of the recordings I'm listening, but
no, if you listen,
it would be fascinating.
If you're lucky enough to get some recordings of Daskalos teaching in Greek, and I have a lot of them, then it goes much deeper in.
Yes,
because he taught with so much love, and he taught with so much compassion. He taught with his hands. He taught with his expression. He taught with his eyes. And
Of course.
when you watch him teach, you know that you're seeing something incredibly authentic, incredibly authentic. You know, no,
Yeah.
he wasn't saying anything he didn't know himself, you know.
He
You were,
experienced it
yeah,
firsthand. I
no,
understand.
yeah, he was a gift. He was
Yeah.
incredible, I tell you. Yeah,
Obviously, the recordings I hear, they are very old, and they are, I cannot see him because it was only, on cassettes, obviously. But yeah, I try to get as much as possible and to relate. Although my wife, because she is also a healer, or
oh,
she's
nice.
trying, she tells me that you have to experience, because I'm not a practicing person. I'm more theoretical. So she says, like Daskalos used to say, if you don't walk the path, there is no real value on it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's
Look,
like that. But
you registered
maybe.
over our website, right, Panos?
Yeah, probably. I'm
So
following the
no,
thing.
I have your email, don't I?
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because
Look,
I can.
when the time is nearer, Paul, we might be interested to join. I don't know. We don't need the accommodation. I mean, if we can we register for the seminars without the hotel, or is it we have to
Sure,
make
but
the
from
whole?
Limassol to Polis every day is going to be about 3 hours or 2.5 hours.
It's 1 hour to go, 1 hour 20 minutes, and 1 hour to come back. I don't know. I mean, if we can
What
manage,
they
let
built
me know. Let me
they
know.
built a new street. I remember driving from Strovolos to Polis, and it took like 3 hours, 3.5 hours.
No, now it's 1 hour, 10 minutes, 15
Wow,
minutes,
wow.
around like that. Yeah, the roads are better, but it's been a long time. How did you decide to visit Cyprus again? Because, you know,
Oh, you mean
it's been a
now?
long time. Huh?
No, because somebody here in Germany, she took a course this springtime, a dance course in Polis.
Right.
And
Okay.
she came to me, she said, you know, Paul, I just stayed at a really, really nice hotel. And I said, where? In Polis. And I remember Polis was one of the nicest areas. Back then, it was really
Yes.
nice. It was sort
Beautiful.
of like a
Yes.
hippie place, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she said, you know, Paul, this hotel, they have great food and they're so nice to the animals. And not only that, the woman who has the hotel says they have two patron saints. One of them's Mother Mary and the other one's Daskalos. And then I came into contact with the hotel.
Right.
And
Okay.
I said, you know, would you be open? And they were so excited and so friendly that I found a date, and that's why I think it's time.
That's
People have been asking me for a long time to guide them to Cyprus, but it's been difficult because there are some very powerful people in Cyprus who claim that they're the only representative of Daskalos, if you know what I mean.
right. I understand. I
Yeah.
understand.
But that's
Yeah.
another story. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
There's always politics everywhere, I guess.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Okay, Paul. Thank you so much for
Thank you
the
both so
seminar,
much.
and
Okay.
we will talk again. Yeah.
We'll stay in touch and you'll get an email from
Yeah.
me soon, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank
And
you very much, Paul.
give my love to your wife and your children, okay?
Sure. Thank you. You
Okay.
too.
Take
Bye bye.
care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.